Hello everybody and welcome back to another video on the channel. Today I'm finally going to be going over my AFL 2022 season predictions. All of the pre-season matches are done now, so I thought why not start getting into the predictions. I doubt there's going to be any more major injuries from here, and if there are, that's unfortunate. Oh well. So the way this is going to work is I'm just going to go over my home and away season predictions, where I think all 18 teams will place. Then I'll go over my finals and premiers predictions. Then I'll go over some post-season awards like the Coleman Medal, Brownlow Medal, Rising Star Award, and I'll go over a surprise All-Australian selection. Pretty simple, pretty standard. I also go over my predictions for each team's best and fairest and leading goal scorer, just to shake it up a little bit. But without further ado, let's get on with the season 2022 predictions. Starting things off with my wooden spooners, we've got the West Coast Eagles. They've just got such a long injury list. It's ridiculous how long it is. Like, they'll have no Dom Sheeds for the first half of the year. Elliot Yeo out for like the first month. Jamie Cripps out for the first month. Jack Darling will be out for the season. They have like one other draftee I forgot the name of who's going to be out for the first half of the year. Yeah, it's just ridiculous. And add that on top of their already aging list and the fact that they just completely crashed and burned in the last half of last year. So they'll have like no momentum going into this season. They had a terrible pre-season, got smacked up in the practice match against Freo by 97. Yeah, this team, they're my wooden spooners. A bit of a controversial call first up, but they're just so shit. Up next in 17th, we've got the Gold Coast Suns. This team I really can't see going anywhere. They don't really have many good players at all. Most of their best 22 is just fringe players from other clubs that have been cut and then picked up by the Suns. They'll have no Ben King for the season. He's like their only good key forward. He kicked he kicked just about as many goals as all of their other key options last year, including recruits they've had from other clubs. So he's a massive out, and I can't really see them recovering from that. If they have any more major injuries, then it could be catastrophic for them. But at least they have had a bit of momentum going into the season. Like in the pre-season, they beat Port and the Cats, which are two pretty good victories. But they'll probably just do the usual Sun season. First 5 rounds, play alright, get a couple of wins, absolutely crash and burn in the last 10 or so rounds, get smashed nearly every week. That's a pretty typical Suns season, and I think it'll probably happen again. In 16th place, I've got the Hawthorn Hawks. This team I did have in last place for a while, but then injuries to the Suns and West Coast just absolutely crippled them. So I thought, you know what, I'll put Hawthorn a little bit higher. I still think their list is pretty ordinary. Like, I can't really name any elite players on the list. Tom Mitchell is like probably the closest to being called elite, but even still, he's a ball magnet and he collects a lot of disposals, but he's not always the most impactful with those disposals. They'll have Jack Gunston back this year after having not quite his whole season wiped with injury last year, but most of it. I don't know how good he'll be. If he could get back to his best, then he did win the best and fairest for them in 2020, so, but I don't know, I just can't really see that happening. He might go alright, kick 30 odd goals, yeah, Hawthorn. That not really many good players at all, honestly. In 15th place, next up we've got the Collingwood Magpies. This team, I think they'll slightly improve from last year. They do have some good youngsters in Nick Dacos, Caleb Poulter, a few others, but they really do have a aging list overall. Like, they have quite a number of players in between like 30 and 34 years old, so that they'll probably stay down the bottom of the ladder the next season or two after this one, but I think they'll slightly improve this year. They don't really have a good key forward yet, so I've got Brody Myercheck as their leading goal scorer again, but he can only really kick like 30, maybe close to 40 goals a season. He doesn't really play that well as a key forward. So yeah, they're really just still not that good, but slight improvement from last season. In 14th spot, I've got the North Melbourne Kangaroos. This is a team that I think is really on the up in 2022. I've got them moving up 4 spots. Obviously, they were the wooden spooners of 2021. At the start of the year, they looked like one of the worst teams of all time. But in the second half of the year, they were pretty much competing with everyone they played. I don't think they got blown out once. They beat the Eagles. Who else did they beat? They drew with GWS. They took it up to Brisbane. They beat Gold Coast, but that wasn't really much of a feat. But yeah, they did take it up to quite a lot of teams in that second half of the year. I can't really remember them being smashed, so I think they'll be a lot more consistently competitive this year, and they have a really great crop of youngsters, probably one of the best in the competition, so they'll be on the up in 2022 for sure. Alright, up next in 13th spot, I've got the Adelaide Crows. This is probably a bit of a controversial one, because I know quite a lot of people don't rate this team at all. I personally do rate this team, or at least I rate their youngsters and what is ahead of them in the future. I don't think they'll quite really challenge for the top 8, but I do think they are capable of more than what a lot of people think they are in 2022. They're going to be getting back Matt Crouch and Wayne Miller this year. Matt Crouch, I think, didn't play a game at all last year. Wayne Miller hasn't played a game for like 2 years. He was always quite a handy backman player. Matt Crouch used to be, like, in 2017, around that time, 2018, 2016, he was like the biggest ball magnet in the game pretty much, before Tom Mitchell really peaked and started like averaging bloody 35 disposals a game, something crazy. Yeah, Matt Crouch and Wayne Miller are big ins this season. They'll have Tex back in round 3 to help out their young key forwards. They have Darcy Fogarty and Riley Thilthorpe as great up-and-coming young key forwards. They have a few good young mid players, Jordan Butts down back and Tom Duday, along with Wayne Miller are coming back. Yeah, I think they're definitely on the up in 2022. Bit of a controversial one here, but I think it can happen. Adelaide 13th. In 12th spot, another controversial one, GWS Giants. They're going to be without Toby Green for the first 5 rounds. He is their best player, I think, when he's not in trouble. if he was able to get like a couple of full seasons without being suspended or injured, he would probably be, like I said, like the best player in the competition. Honestly, he is insanely good, but he's just always suspended. It feels like. So yeah, that'll be a massive out for them for the first 5 rounds. They lost Jeremy Finlayson. He was an alright forward. He's not a super massive loss, but they could have done with getting someone back in for his departure, but they just didn't. So personally, I think they're a bit of an overrated team, honestly. I've heard a lot of people say they're an underrated team. I think the opposite. Yeah, GWS, I think will miss the finals. They're definitely a step up from like Adelaide and North and Collingwood. They're a step up from all those teams, but I just really can't see them doing well this season. They'll challenge for the 8. I think they'll miss out. In 11th place, I've got Carlton. I think realistically, with the list they've got, they probably should make the 8. They have a lot of talent. Patrick Cripps, who, from what I've heard, is back to his best this season. He's had a brilliant off-season. He had a great pre-season game against Melbourne, 4 goals and 30 disposals. So I think he'll be back to his best and win the best and fairest. They have Harry Mackay, who is just coming off a Coleman Medal winning season. They've got Adam Chera they brought in. I forgot to mention that with the Crows, actually. Jordan Dawson they brought in. Don't know how I forgot that. So yeah, Adam Chera in. They've got Adam Sard, Zach Williams. If they can hit their straps, they could do well. But down back, they lost Liam Jones. That's a big out. They still have Jacob Wiedering, though. He's a good centre-half back. Yeah, I just don't trust them enough to put them in the top 8. They should, in the next season or 2, make the top 8. They should really be pushing to make the top 8 this season, but I just don't trust them enough. Alright, next up, I've got the Richmond Tigers in 10th place. A lot of people have got this team like roaring back into the top 8, the top 4 even, some people have said. I can't really see it happening. They've got an ageing list. A few players retired. They, depending on whether they have like an injury-ridden season or not this year, I don't know, maybe they could make the 8. I just can't see it happening, honestly. Like I said, they've got an ageing list. That's really all there is to it. They have a couple of younger stars in the making. Shai Bolton, Jack Graham. Actually, I don't know how old he is. He's definitely not young, but he's probably gonna maybe have a breakout season, maybe. They have Dustin Martin back. He's kind of getting older now. He probably won't be as good as he was. He might jump back into the All-Australian team. I can't really see him challenging for Brownlow or anything. Like I've seen some Richmond fans say, he's not Brownlow medal contention anymore. But yeah, Richmond 10th. Up next in 9th spot, I've got the Essendon Football Club. A team they probably could have put in the top 8, but they've just been in a cycle the past 10 or 15 years where they make the finals, lose in the elimination or semi-final by a shit ton, miss the 8 the next year, make it back in the finals a year later. They've just been in a cycle for a while. When they'll break it, I don't know. But I just have them missing the 8 because of that reason alone, pretty much. Starting off the top 8, I've got St Kilda. I didn't originally have this team in the top 8, but I decided to swap them around with Essendon because beforehand, when I had Essendon in the 8, that would have meant that, according to my predictions, only one new team would make the 8 this year, and that just seemed like too little because there's always like 2 or 3 at least each year. So I decided to put St Kilda in the top 8. Bit of a probably unpopular one, but I think it can happen. They don't have a bad team. They've got Jack Steele, Max King, a few other underrated players, Brad Hill, Jade Gresham coming back. Yeah, I think they can make the 8. My second new team making the 8 this year is Fremantle. They've been in a rebuild for a while now, and I think they're finally coming to the end of it. They have a lot of really great up-and-coming talent. They did lose Adam Chera, but I think that won't be a catastrophic loss for them. They've still got Caleb Sarong, Andrew Brayshaw, Sean Darcy, Liam Henry, Jordan Clark in their team now. Nat Fyfe hopefully will stay uninjured. If he does, then that'll be big. David Mundy for experience, he was great last year despite being like 36 or something. Matt Tabner could have a big year this year. Yeah, I think they can really take some strides in 2022 to becoming a great team. But Fremantle in 7th place. Next up, we've got a team that I think will drop down a little bit, and that is Geelong. Simply because they just have such an old list. There's so many players on the list that is like 30 years or older. Got Tom Hawkins like 34, Gary Rowan 30, Joel Selwood. There's a bunch of others. I think Tom Hawkins, he's been their leading goal scorer for the last like 10 or 11 years. I think Jeremy Cameron becomes their leading goal scorer this year and challenges for the Coleman Medal. So they definitely have still a lot of talent on their team, but it's very old. There's a lot of memes around it, how old it is, but yeah. This is probably their last chance at challenging for a premiership before they dip down for a while. In 5th place, I've got my own team, Sydney. I think we have a great up-and-coming list. Got some brilliant youngsters like Logan McDonald, Errol Goulden, Sam Wicks, Justin McInerney, Chad Warner. Paddy McCartan has now got a list spot along with his brother Tom McCartan. That is great news. Isaac Heaney ready for a breakout year this year. Buddy Franklin only 5 goals away from 1,000. Hopefully he gets that in round 1 or 2. That'll be great stuff. And I think we should be on the way up, hopefully. Not quite top 4 this year, but we should challenge for that in the next couple of years. So good signs for Sydney. Starting off the top 4, I've got Port Adelaide. I think they're a bit of a tier below the next 3 teams, but definitely a top 4 worthy team. They've got lots of great players all around the ground, but a lot of them I wouldn't consider like superstar elite status. Ollie Wines obviously won the Brownlow. Travis Boakes, another great midfielder. Mitch Georgiades is an up-and-coming superstar in the forward line. They've picked up Jeremy Finlayson this year. They have a few other really good youngsters. Yeah, I feel like they lack just a tiny bit of chemistry with like some of the injuries they've had, and like swapping out their forward line in particular. Still a great team, but I think they probably maybe just scrape into the top 4. Next up, in 3rd spot, I have got the Western Bulldogs. Now, these next 3 teams, I think, they're really just a class above the rest of the teams, I feel. Like, there's a clear, distinct difference in skill level between Bulldogs, Demons, and the Lions compared to every other team. The Bulldogs, obviously, last year's runners-up. I don't think they'll have too much of a grand final loss hangover. They still have some great players. Obviously, no Bruce for a lot of the season. That could be a big out. But Aaron Norton, I think, is primed and ready to have a insane breakout season. Best contested marker in the game. He looks just so promising for them. Marcus Bontempelli, Jack McRae, Tom Liberatore, Adam Treloar, all in the midfield. They have an insane midfield, probably the best in the comp. Backline, bit of a weak spot for them, but their midfield really just carries them. And I think the two teams above them are not that much better, but I think they're still just probably primed to have a slightly better season than the Bulldogs. Second place in the top two, I've got the Melbourne Demons. Obviously, last year's premiers. Only reason why I haven't got them minor premiers again this year is because that is a pretty uncommon feat to go back-to-back minor premiers. They'll be hunted this year, but they still have an insanely good team. Superstars everywhere. They have the best backline in the comp, probably second best midfield in the comp, maybe second or third best midfield in the comp, and probably the second or third best forward line in the comp. They just have such a complete team. And again, the only reason why I'm not putting them first is because back-to-back minor premiers is pretty hard to do. And finally, it is time for my minor premiers of 2022, the Brisbane Lions. I think they are just a almost complete team. Their forward line is the best in the competition, in my opinion. They've got Joe Danaher, Charlie Cameron, Lincoln McCarthy, Dan McStay, Eric Whitwood when he comes back. Midfield's also great. Backline is decent as well. They just have a really good team all around. I think they'll be minor premiers for, like I said before, it's going to be hard for Melbourne to go back-to-back minor premiers, and I think Brisbane are probably, along with the Bulldogs, most likely candidates for minor premiers this year. Yeah, Brisbane, just a great team. They do have some woes playing outside the Gabba, but I think they'll be really good this year, and that perhaps won't play as much of a role. Well, I just went over my minor premiers, and now I'm going to go over my major premiers, the Bulldogs. I think they'll get a bit of revenge this year after a grand final loss last year, and I think they'll do it against the Demons. So, my Demons are my tip for the runners-up, and my tip for the premiers is the Dogs. So, it'll be like a 2005-2006 grand final matchup. Yeah, so that's my tip for that. Time to get into the awards now. First up, Marcus Bontempelli, Norm Smith medalist. No surprises here since I tipped Bulldogs for premiers. Not really much to say. Up next, I've got the Coleman medal winner being Aaron Norton. Like I said earlier, I think he's primed for a breakout season this year. Best contested marker in the game. No Bruce, so he'll be the primary target. I think he could really thrive and use this as a good opportunity to break out. So my Brownlow medalist now is going to be Jack Steele. He hasn't really got much competition amongst his own St Kilda midfield, so there's not really many players I can think of that would steal large amount of votes off of him, unlike players like Clayton Oliver, Christian Petrarca, Marcus Bontempelli, Ollie Wines a little bit. Yeah, I think Jack Steele probably has the most chance because, again, he won't have votes being stolen off him left, right and centre like the other players. Next up, I've got my Rising Star Award winner, probably the most unpredictable award. I've got Jason Horne-Francis. He along with Nick Dacos was the best player in the draft pool, and I'm tipping him for that reason. Next up, we've got my final tip of the day, and this one's not really an award. This is my surprise All-Australian. I've got Isaac Heaney. I don't really know how much of a surprise this would classify as, but he hasn't made All-Australian team before. There's a lot of other like mid-forward players who could get in the team other than him, so I think it qualifies maybe. But Isaac Heaney's had a great pre-season, kicking like 3 goals in the practice match over GWS and another 4 against North Melbourne. 6-year contract extension. he looks in great nick, so can't wait to see what he produces in 2022. Well, there you have it, guys. They are all of my tips and predictions for the 2022 AFL season. Be sure to like and subscribe and comment down below what are your predictions for this upcoming season. That is it for me, and I'll see you all in the next one.